Hello, everybody, and welcome to Next Point Wins. I am your host, Matthew Geely, and welcome inside my basement as I am doing the show on the road today. No live show on WCCR Purdue and Purdue Student Radio. Nothing but the podcast. So everybody listening around the country, welcome in. Take off your shoes and stay a while because we have a full lineup of just really, really good things to talk about. It's the eve of one of the top days and 2 days, in my opinion, of the year as far as a sports fanatic. March Madness is knocking on our doorstep. It's time to let them in. If you caught the first two games last night, it got us off to a great start in what is set to be a very exciting and entertaining tournament this year. If you didn't catch last night, Radford knocked off LIU 71-61, so they will move on. And they will take on Villanova on Thursday, tomorrow, as well as St. Bonaventure beat UCLA 65-58. So they move on, and they will also play on Thursday. So that's two of the four playing games out of the way. Got two more tonight, starting off with Texas Southern taking on NCCU. And then you have Arizona Arizona State taking on Syracuse. That's scheduled to start about 9:10. First game at 6:40. If you caught a lot of the bracket talk the last couple days, there's been so many, countless storylines, really, and countless teams and players to watch out for. Some drama, as we get every year, on who made it and who didn't make it, and who deserves to be where they are, and who got a better seed or a worse seed than they should have. Plenty of that, and we'll dive into a little bit of that later on in the show. But, I mean, you set aside March Madness, and we got a lot more to talk about with NFL free agency getting underway and just top players here and there and big names getting big contracts, some questionable moves, some good moves for teams. I'm going to dive into all that and look at team by team, position by position, who got paid, who got underpaid, who's at a place where they can succeed, who is just a doormat for the next rookie to come in. Plenty of that to talk about. Also some baseball spring training as we're getting closer and closer, now under 2 weeks until opening day. Some storylines there and some players getting some late contracts and switching teams. But I want to start out with what was arguably and what was a phenomenal weekend of conference tournaments in the NCAA. This individual took the spotlight and stole it back, and it's something that we haven't seen in years. Tiger Woods was back in contention over the weekend at the Valspar Championship, finishing in second place behind Paul Casey. And if I didn't just give away Paul Casey and I asked the question, who finished first at the Valspar, I guarantee you a good majority of my audience would be like, some Casey dude maybe? Because he was the forgotten subject in what was a weekend of Tiger Woods. And I'm on record, and you can go back, and by the way, if you want to contact the show, you can at nextptwins@gmail.com or on Twitter at Matt_Geely. But you can also find every episode of Next Point Wins on YouTube. Go to Next Point Wins. You can subscribe for free, and you can go back and watch. I mean, we're in our third season now, and somebody asked me the other day how many episodes we've done. And I'm going to go back and do the math because I think we're approaching our 50th show. So I have to go back and check that out. But you can go back and listen to some of my past episodes. And I know there was a few episodes there when Tiger was doing the back fusion where I said, you know, he's had 3 back surgeries. He's had a ruptured inflated disc, and it's amazing that he is back just living comfortably and going about his daily activities in comfort. And to even think that he could get back to playing competitive golf at the highest level in the world and competing with some of the best players in the world is amazing. And it's shocking that he was able to put together, and I know he didn't win, and he could go out this week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational and be a dud and get nothing accomplished and do horrible. But he fought too on Sunday. If you didn't catch the round, He started out second place. He birdied the first hole, bogeyed one. He was even for most of the front nine. And then, he was just battling. He wasn't hitting great golf shots. He wasn't making mistakes, but he wasn't scoring. The best way that my brother and I who were watching it could describe it was he was out there surviving, but he wasn't thriving. He was not, and speaking of that, I'm sure there's a lot of you. Hello to my audience, Purdue students in Fort Lauderdale and other places in Florida and California. I'm sure a lot of you guys are surviving but not quite thriving. Thanks for taking an hour out of your day to catch Next Point Wins. If you're watching on a beach or, wherever you're listening, feel free to email me a photo at nextptwins@gmail.com or send it to me on Twitter, Matt_Gigli, Gigli. I'd like to see where we're catching Next Point Wins this week. I know a lot of people are traveling. Hopefully a lot of people are heading up to Detroit on Friday. And maybe this is some good car background noise to pass the time, as I will also give you an in-depth coverage of CSU Fullerton, our first round matchup. But yeah, send me a photo if you're chilling out on the beach with your toes in the sand. Love to see where my audience is listening this week, because I know it's definitely not in the classroom and it's not at a study table. So hopefully everybody's enjoying their spring break. But like I'm saying, he didn't thrive, but he wasn't scoring. He was just staying in it. And then he hits that 40-foot putt on 17, and you're like, oh man, he has a shot. And he gave himself a shot on 18 too. He didn't have a great approach shot, but he gave himself a chance, and he just left it short. So a disappointing ending, but then you take that momentum and it goes right into the selection show, and we'll talk about the selection show later, because you want to talk about just excitement for 3 hours and then just a dud, just falling flat on their face. CBS in the selection show. We'll have some look inside that coming up, but yeah, he hung around, and what does this mean for him going forward? I think this weekend it's just making the cut. It's putting together week after week 4 rounds of quality golf. And then you get to the Masters and anything can happen. He could go out in the Masters and finish dead last. Or he can go out and shoot, stay in contention, and be right there again on Sunday. And that's why Vegas has him up in the top 5 in Masters odds to win the tournament now. I hesitate to say he is back, because when you say he's back, you're thinking of the old Tiger. And there's a part of Tiger Woods that will never be there again. And for any of us who are old enough to remember and experience what he was for so many years, we are lucky. And I say this in multiple sports, when you get the chance to witness somebody great, a lot of times in the moment you don't realize what you get to watch. And that's what I say about Tom Brady. That's what I say about LeBron James. I wasn't old enough to be able to watch Michael Jordan. I don't remember watching him play. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who did see him in person who recognized that he was so great, but also didn't realize how amazing he really was until after he was done playing. And it's the same thing. You can't compare these guys. You can't compare Tom Brady to anybody right now until he's done, and you'll look back and you'll be watching the NFL one day and you'll be like, there's no Tom Brady out there. Wow, it's amazing what we aren't seeing. Well, that's the same with Tiger Woods. We're lucky, if you're a golf fan out there, you're lucky right now, because you have Jordan Spieth, you have Rory McIlroy, you have Justin Rose, you have Dustin Johnson, and you have Jason Day. I mean, you have these guys who are the top of their game, and they're young, and they're exciting, and they're all different in their own way, but they're all great in their own way. But then you have Tiger Woods, who, just look at the ratings. It was the highest watched tournament outside of a major since like 2013, and it just blew away almost everything else that it was matched up against on Sunday afternoon. And like I said, it wasn't like it was a slow sports day. You had some very important conference tournaments. You had the selection show right around the corner, so everybody was tuning into ESPN to get the first analysis of the bracket. And Tiger Woods, a shock to nobody, stole the show again. And it was fun to watch. I look forward to watching him again this weekend. Hopefully he makes it to Sunday and he'll be in contention again. As long as he keeps putting together, I mean, we're getting spoiled right now, guys. We are spoiled. But if he keeps putting together these quality rounds, it bodes well for us in the future, and it bodes well for him, and who knows? Maybe he takes another run at this thing. I thought all along that just him getting back to living a comfortable life and even being able to swing a golf club would be amazing. And anything past that, I said, we are getting bonus. We're getting bonus Tiger Woods. And right now, this is bonus Tiger Woods. Sunday was a bonus. And we can't take for granted because we don't know how many more of these opportunities we'll have, because at any moment, it could come to a screeching halt and he be done. So it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes next in his journey. A lot of free agency in the NFL. Switching sports here. I want to dive into what's happening, because we're seeing there's one major overall theme that we're seeing, and it is setting the precedent for years to come. And it could be something that we look back on as, wow, that was the first of many. And it comes from Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, former quarterback of the Washington Redskins, expected to sign with the Vikings for 3 years, $84 million, guaranteed money. Now, we have never seen that before in the NFL, for a full contract to be guaranteed. And it's going to set up for years to come players looking at that contract and saying, well, I'm worth guaranteed money. Matt Ryan, contract year next year. Aaron Rodgers, contract year. Their eyes just lit up because they know they're worth more than Kirk Cousins. So first off, they're going to get more money. Start there. And second, guaranteed money. That's what we see. That's a baseball contract. We see baseball players all the time get full contracts and guaranteed. Because, well, the main reason why you don't see football players, this is why this is new and why we're not used to seeing football players get guaranteed money. It's because their shelf life is less and the risk of injury is so much higher in football than any other sport. It's the most physical sport you can play, and you just don't see players lasting, aside from the quarterback position. Players don't last as long as they used to, and as long as players do in other sports. If I'm sitting at home and I'm Le'Veon Bell, though, I'm seeing what these guys are getting, guaranteed money. I mean, let's just look at running backs to begin with. Where to begin? Looks like Carlos Hyde is about to sign with the Browns, 3 years, $15 million. Jerick McKinnon signing with the 49ers, 4 years, $30 million. Dion Lewis leaving the Patriots. He's going to the Titans, 4 years, $20 million. Right now, Le'Veon Bell, $14.5 million. That's his franchise tag with the Steelers. Get ready to pay up, Pittsburgh. If you want him, get ready to pay up. Because, I mean, we can even go to wide receivers. Because a lot, Sammy Watkins, turns with the Chiefs. 3 years, $48 million. $48 million. Le'Veon Bell has more catches than a wide receiver, Sammy Watkins, does. And he's getting $48 million for 3 years. Le'Veon Bell is going to get paid. And if it's not by Pittsburgh, it's going to be by somebody else. Somebody's going to take that risk. I know he has trouble staying on the field. I know he has trouble staying healthy. He has trouble staying out of trouble. But he's going to get paid. And it's going to be very interesting on who's going to do it. Because Pittsburgh, I don't blame you for taking another year, but every year you wait on signing this guy, the price tag goes up, and they get farther apart in the negotiation process between Le'Veon Bell's camp and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that, I just see dollar signs in my head because he's going to get paid. It's just a matter of who does it. So back to Kirk Cousins in this $84 million guaranteed. 3 years, and if you're the Vikings, you want to talk about making moves. I was on the record thinking they'd keep one of these quarterbacks. Everybody's gone. Teddy Bridgewater's going to the Jets, 1 year deal. That's a doormat, and we'll get to what I mean by a doormat here in a minute. Sam Bradford, he's going to the Cardinals, 1 year, $20 million. That's a doormat. Case Keenum's going to the Broncos, 2 years, $36 million. That's a doormat. So you have 3 quarterbacks at Minnesota now all leaving the team, and they're going to teams where they are doormats. 1 year rentals. When I say doormat, I mean every single one of these teams I just mentioned. Cardinals, who got Bradford, Broncos, who got Keenum, and Jets, who got Bridgewater. All 3 of those teams, I think, are going to draft a quarterback in the first round. Now, you look at teams who've done this in the past. Well, the Bears pretty much set the tone for this last year when they got Mike Glennon and still drafted Trubisky, a top 3 pick. So Bears set the pace for this to happen. No pun intended, Ryan Pace. And now all these teams are doing the same thing, and I'm not sure it's the smart. Now hindsight's 2020, but it didn't work for the Bears. Glennon was a train wreck. It was a waste of money. We gave him too much money for even 1 year. And it set us back in free agency last year, and it made us use too much money on one guy who didn't even give us quality time on the field. Now, I think I full-heartedly believe that Case Keenum, Sam Bradford, and Teddy Bridgewater are all better than Mike Glennon. So we can start there. Speaking of Mike Glennon, he also signs with the Cardinals. Don't know money on that yet, but that's an interesting development. So you have all 3 of these teams. So I don't think this changes the draft board one bit. And you can throw the Browns in there too, except for I think the Browns, it's a little more complicated because you got 2 picks at near the top of the draft, one being the number 1 overall pick. So I don't think you have to go quarterback at 1 now because they got Tyrod Taylor in a trade with the Bills, where they sent Deshaun Kaiser from the Browns to the Packers. So you have Tyrod Taylor, who can be your bridge quarterback. He can be there for a year or 2 and give whoever you draft time to develop and give you time to see what you got while still putting out a decent product on the field. And that's something that they haven't been able to do. One, they haven't been able to draft a quarterback that they can develop because they've all been horrible. And second, when they're trying to develop these guys, who they have out on the field is so bad and so unwatchable that they got to throw these rookies out there and they're getting crushed because, well, first off, they're not any good. And secondly, they're playing way earlier than they ever should. So for the first time, I say the Browns have a quarterback who takes care of the ball. He's consistent. He's good enough to where you can have a decent product out there on the field while still grooming your rookie quarterback behind him. A doormat. Case Keenum with the Broncos. Broncos need to draft. They need to draft a quarterback bad because John Elway, with a huge swing and a miss on Paxton Lynch, he's got to try it again. He's got to go to the well one more time. And if he makes another mistake, who knows what that means for him in his future with the Broncos. But you have Case Keenum. He can go out there. I don't think he's going to be anywhere near as good as he was last year because I don't think the Broncos are anywhere near a playoff team or a title contender. So Case Keenum went from a legitimate title contender to a team that's not. But he'll go out there. He'll give you quality. He'll be a quality quarterback. He'll take care of the ball. He'll be good enough to where you can draft a quarterback, take your time with him, groom him for a year, put him out there near the end of the season if you want to see what he's got, and set yourself up for the future if you get it right on the pick. Sam Bradford, same thing. He goes to the Cardinals. Between him and Mike Glennon, or maybe both of them, they'll go out there. The Cardinals are nowhere near a title contender, nowhere near a playoff team. You can still draft a quarterback high in this draft. These 2 guys can go out, pave the way, hold the spot, be a doormat on the door until you're ready to bring in the good guy. And then you let him in the door, and boom. You got yourself a franchise quarterback on a contending team. And the Jets are the same way. Is this the smart move? First off, I think these quarterbacks are getting way too much money. Case Keenum getting $36 million is ridiculous. Sam Bradford getting $20 million is ridiculous. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't know how much his 1 year deal is worth, but at least it's only 1 year. That's at least in the right direction. If you're the Browns, you traded for Tyrod Taylor and you didn't give up anything in the first 3 rounds as far as picks. Smart. That works. Kirk Cousins, He's different because the Vikings aren't looking for a doormat. They're looking for somebody who can take a team who's already on the brink of a title and push them over the top. And the Vikings think that Kirk Cousins is that guy. And so what do? They give him 3 years, $84 million guaranteed. That's a lot of money. That is staring down the barrel saying, you are our guy. You can bring us over the top. That's giving $84 million guaranteed to a player who's never won a big game in the playoffs. Never won a big game, period. He's a good quarterback. Is he great? Because he is getting paid money that goes to a great quarterback. So if you're Kirk Cousins, you better hope. Well, excuse me, you're getting money. You don't care. If you're the Minnesota Vikings, you better hope that Kirk Cousins is great because you're paying him like it, and you need him to take a team who's so close to going over the top. You need him to take this team over the top because you're saying goodbye to Teddy Bridgewater, who was believed to be the guy before he got hurt. You're saying goodbye to Sam Bradford, who had a decent year. I'm good with him going. And you're saying goodbye to Case Keenum, who was a game manager, and he was not. He was close, but he didn't get you over the top, so you let him go. I'm shocked they didn't keep one of those three as a backup to Kirk. I'm shocked they couldn't figure out a way to keep Teddy Bridgewater on a 1-year contract with the Vikings instead of a 1-year deal with the Jets. I'm just blown away that they couldn't find a way to keep one of those guys. So Kirk is the man, and it'll be very interesting to see what's going to be it's going to be a fairly competitive NFC North because the Packers, who we'll talk about here in a minute, they also got a lot better in this last 24 hours. So an NFC North with the Bears still trying to figure it out. They also, in a lot of ways, got better this last 24 hours. And you listen to some of the guys on NFL Network and ESPN. They've had one of the more successful free agencies. Now that's not saying much because you're going from absolutely nothing. So anything is up from here. And then you still have the Detroit Lions, who've been quiet in free agency because, well, they don't really need to spend a lot of money right now because they think that they are only a few pieces away, and they think that they can attack that in the draft. And in a lot of ways, that's smart because when you look at this free agency stuff, it's not guaranteed. A lot of these guys don't work; they don't pan out, and you're giving a ton of money to them. So a lot of these guys are coming off of injuries. A lot of these guys are in the back half of their career, and you're hoping to get something out of them before they're done. And some of them work, but a lot of them really don't pan out. So you got to be careful when you risk it in free agency because it is a risk. Now, it's a risk in the draft as well. Don't get me wrong. But at least these guys are young, and they're able, and a lot of them are healthy or new and raw, and you're able to develop them in your own system. These guys are coming from other systems, and they have their own baggages. So what happens next will be very interesting to see. Rounding out the quarterbacks who got signed in free agency, that way we cover them all. Drew Brees was expected to re-sign with the Saints. He did. 2-year contract, $50 million. Let's just freeze there for a minute. Drew Brees, future Hall of Famer, going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks stat-wise in NFL history. Super Bowl champion, 2 years, $50 million. Kirk Cousins, 3 years, $84 million guaranteed. That just puts it in perspective how important it is if you're a Vikings fan and you're the Minnesota Vikings that you got it right and Kirk Cousins is your man. Time will tell. A.J. McCarron looking like possibly going to the Bills or the Broncos. Both teams still in the mix. That would be another doormat for either side because both of those teams will be drafting a quarterback. Josh McCown re-signed with the Jets. That's another option if Teddy Bridgewater gets hurt or doesn't pan out to be a doormat for the next guy they bring in. Ryan Fitzpatrick with the Buccaneers, back up to Jameis Winston. We already talked about Deshaun Kaiser. Matt Castle was released by the Titans. So Titans will be in need of a backup quarterback. I don't know if they go draft or if they go one of these other guys. Talked about Mike Glennon, and last but not least, this was new this morning. Chase Daniel is signing with the Bears for 2 years, $10 million to be a backup and mentor to Mitch Trubisky. I think that's a very nice move for the Bears. Chase Daniel knows Ryan Pace because he was in New Orleans when Chase Daniels was in New Orleans, and he also played under Andy Reid, which is a direct line to Matt Nagy, the Bears head coach, offensive coordinator. So he knows the system and he knows the GM, a guy who's never really had a shot in the NFL, and maybe this will be a case where if he gets some playing time, if God forbid something happens to Trubisky, or the Bears decide that, I don't really know what the Bears are thinking with this. I don't know if they think he's going to play or if he's just a mentor, a backup quarterback. But look for him to, maybe the Bears can flip him and get something for him around the trade deadline for a team that needs a quarterback due to injury. Because there's been talk that he has a lot of potential. He just hasn't had a shot yet. Maybe this is his last stepping stone before he finally gets that big shot. Moving on to running backs, we already talked about Deion Lewis going from the Patriots to the Titans. Le'Veon Bell still at the Steelers on the tag, still looking for a new deal. Jerick McKinnon, he used to be with the Minnesota Vikings. He signed with the Niners. Carlos Hyde, who was with the Niners, these are all running backs. He was with the Niners. He's going to sign with the Browns. 3 years, $15 million. So that's your change of pace running back, Carlos Hyde. He's more of a power, goal line, third and short, second and short type of running back. He'll be a good change of pace with, in my opinion, Saquon Barkley, who I think the Browns should draft at number 1 now. We'll see about that. Doug Martin, who used to be phenomenal with the Buccaneers, he got released. He's visiting with the Raiders, so we'll see where he ends up. Jonathan Stewart was released by the Panthers. He's going to sign with the Giants, 2 years, $6.9 million. Nice. DeMarco Murray was released by the Titans. He's visiting the Lions, per ESPN. And the Seahawks are also on the list for DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray, not a bad running back. I think the Lions would be a great fit for DeMarco Murray. The Lions need a running back. They need to change it up. They need to get away from Theo Riddick, and they need to find a guy who can be maybe not an every down back. And I think DeMarco Murray might be past his prime in that, but it's definitely a change of pace back. And somebody who, when he stays healthy and on the field, very effective. Isaiah Crowell, who was with the Browns, is now signing with the Jets, so that's why they need to bring in Carlos Hyde, because you lost Crowell. Chris Ivory was released by the Jags. He spent quite a few years with the Saints. Didn't even know he was with the Jaguars, I'm going to be honest with you. He's now moving to the Bills to be back up to LaShawn McCoy. Danny Woodhead was released by the Ravens. Crickets on where he's going at the moment. And that's it for running backs. So, not a lot of huge names, not a lot of big-time names, but that's what we're seeing in the NFL nowadays. I mean, you're hard-pressed to find a team who has that one guy, that one running back. A lot of them it's a 2 to 3 running back system because these guys just can't stay healthy and their shelf life is so short that free agency running backs they're dangerous, especially if you're giving out crazy money. Where we saw some of our biggest names getting thrown around was in the wide receiver core. First and foremost, and the biggest name on the list, in my opinion, and I'm very glad my team got him, Allen Robinson leaves the Jags. He's going to the Bears. It's going to be 3 years, reportedly $42 million. Coming off of an ACL, only played very limited snaps last year for the Jags. He gives the Bears not a deep threat, but a guy who can, first off, catch the football, which, boom, that's an upgrade because we didn't have a single wide receiver who could consistently catch the football, which is not exactly great. So there's your first upgrade. He can catch. He's a playmaker. He's a possession guy, and he's a change of pace. He's different than what we're used to. He's not 6'6". He's not Brandon Marshall. He's not Alshon Jeffrey. He's not this big-framed guy who boxes you out and can't get down the field. This guy is different, and it's a weapon. Say what you want. If he's good or bad, he's a weapon that Trubisky has yet to have in the NFL. Because last year he was playing with 0 weapons with the wide receivers. So, boom, Bears get a weapon. That's a start. The other big name on the free agency market was Jarvis Landry, who was tagged by the Dolphins, but he got traded to the Browns. So the Browns get Jarvis Landry. That's a good wide receiver who's going to be helpful for whoever they draft, and also for Tyrod Taylor for the time being. We talked about Sammy Watkins going to the Chiefs for $48 million. Josh Gordon got re-signed by the Browns, 1 year, $790,000. If he can stay clean and stay on the field, that'll be interesting. Jordy Nelson was released by the Packers. The Raiders have interest in him. I'd stay away from Jordy Nelson. I think his best years are behind him, and I think that Aaron Rodgers benefited him a lot throughout his time with Green Bay, and I'm not sure he's what he used to be. I'd steer clear of Jordy Nelson. I don't think that one pays off. Dante Moncrief is leaving the Colts. He'll sign with the Jags, so he stays in the AFC South. 1 year, $7 million. Never really heard much about this guy. When he first got drafted by the Colts, I heard there was a lot of optimism behind him and what he could be. I'm not sure if he got lost in Indy, especially when Andrew Luck went down. Maybe his time with the Colts would have been different if Andrew Luck was healthy. But I mean, that's an interesting pickup by the Jaguars. It'll be interesting to see what Blake Bortles can do with that. That pretty much rounds out the big names as far as, I mean, Danny Amendola, Mr. Playoffs for the Patriots. He's going to sign with the Dolphins. That's a kind of a loss for the Patriots, but we'll see if that was, I mean, it's hard to say the Patriots made a bad move because they always seem to figure it out. And then Taylor Gabriel is joining Allen Robinson with the Bears. He'll be the slot guy. Tight ends, a couple big names. Jimmy Graham is going to the Packers, and that is why I think the Packers hugely benefited from free agency. That's a nice pickup for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. He's still got some good years left in it. 3 years, $30 million, and he's a big target. He's a pain for defenses and secondaries. I think he could put up some really, really good numbers with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Tyler Eifert, a local kid from Fort Wayne, Indiana, says that he's fully healthy and he's going to lead the Bengals. So that's a tight end out there on the market that teams will look into. Trey Burton from the Eagles, he's going to the Bears. 4 years, $32 million. Pass catcher, he'll be a nice complement to Adam Shaheen. He'll be a second-year player for the Bears. And then Brent Selleck, released by the Eagles. He's been with the Eagles for a long time. So that's a move. I mean, there's just so many names here. Ndamukong Suh was released by the Dolphins. Haven't heard yet where he's going. Maybe the Cowboys. That could be a possible destination for him. So that's a big D lineman who's now on the market. Couple linebackers released. You got Alex Ogletree. He got traded from the Rams to the Giants. Rams made some moves, getting Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. Kind of, it's an old secondary, but it's more solidified in the back half of a team that's also right on the brink of going over the top and being a playoff contending team. But I mean, that's just to name the few. There's so many guys released, traded, signed. It's if you like being a GM on like Madden and you like making trades, this is your time to shine because there's a lot of that going on and there's a lot that you can stay in touch with. So as far as the draft goes, like I said, I don't think the draft board changes all that much. I think it's still going to be a quarterback-heavy top of the draft. I still think the Browns take a quarterback. I don't think they have to take one number one. If you want Baker Mayfield, if you want Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen, you can get these guys in your second pick in the first round. So maybe you go Saquon Barkley. It's dangerous picking a running back that high, but if he truly is that once-in-a-lifetime player, you go with it. And there will be a lot of teams trading up to try to get one of those top quarterbacks. So any team in that top 10 who's not really in need of one, they will have the opportunity to trade down and really grab some assets while not losing a lot of talent as far as in the draft board. So, I mean, NFL season right around the corner, but before we get to that, we have baseball spring training, we have baseball around the corner, and even more recent, March Madness. So when we come back here on Next Point Wins, we will go into the bracket and look at my Final Four predictions, my upsets of the first and second rounds, and who to look out for and who to steer clear from. Coming up next on Next Point Wins. So we got two play-in games tonight as we have Texas Southern taking on NCCU. Let's start there. Freeze. NCCU. All right, everybody. Here we go. Guess. What team is NCCU? If you guessed North Carolina Central, you are correct. If you didn't, you are in the majority. That game taking on Texas Southern, 216s. That's at 6:40 p.m. on True TV. It's one time a year that True TV is relevant. Winner of that game gets Xavier in the first round on Friday. And then the other game is Syracuse against Arizona State. Winner of that game gets an interesting matchup against, I'm blanking, I think it's Florida. Efforting. Yep, nope, TCU. Interesting game against TCU, a 6 seed. Winner of that, Arizona State, Syracuse, plugs into that 11 seed. And, these are considered the first round games. I hate that every year because I don't look at it as the first round games. I think these play-in games, I know you're in the tournament, but are you really in the tournament if you don't win that first game? Because you get forgotten quick, because everybody, you have some of us who tune in on Tuesday and Wednesday, but there's a great majority that do not care about these play-in games, and the tournament doesn't start for a lot of people until Thursday. And I get it, because that's when the excitement really starts going. I don't know what the ratings were last night on True TV, but I can't imagine they were amazing. And so it's hard for me to say that these are first-round games. I really look at, when you think first round, I think of Thursday and Friday. But these are technically the first-round games, and those will come up tonight. I don't know what everybody's overall opinion was of this bracket. I've heard a lot of different things, and nobody seems to agree on quite a few different parts of it. One of the biggest things is, does Oklahoma deserve to be in this tournament? And I think it's easy, and I go back, I have the same philosophy with this as I do at the All-Star games. And when people say so-and-so should have made the All-Star game or so-and-so should be in the NCAA tournament, my first thought is, okay, if you want to put them in, take somebody out. And I've heard a lot of talking heads on CBS and ESPN talk about how so-and-so deserves to be in this tournament, but they refuse to say who doesn't. So that concerns me. Now, Jay Billis, I will give him credit because he had an interesting idea where he thinks that we have too many teams in Division I college basketball. Compared to football, we have I think he said 300 and some Division I college basketball teams, where football is 110. It's like 110, 120. And he thinks that we need to, some of these teams don't deserve to be Division I, and because of that, we have some of these conferences who should be combining with each other, and we should have less automatic bids and more at large. So less conference tournaments, and don't get me wrong, these conference tournaments have been amazing, but I could do for a couple less. And then you have more automatic bids, you have more at large teams from these power conferences getting into the tournament. Because teams like Nebraska and Penn State are undoubtedly a lot better than teams like Penn and Buffalo and UMBC, good luck telling me who that is, and Marshall's kind of good. I'm not going to go there. CSU Fullerton, there's Bucknell. There's teams in this tournament that probably aren't as good as some of these, that aren't as good as Oklahoma, that aren't as good as Notre Dame, that aren't as good as Nebraska, Penn State, St. Mary's, Middle Tennessee State. So I get it, but you can't invite everybody. So if you want to take somebody. If you want to put somebody in, you got to take somebody out. So that was my overall theme with that whole in and out. I don't really like to mess with that business of this team should be in, this team should be out. I like looking at overall conferences and where they stack up. And the conference breakdown to me is very, very interesting. And I am now willing, I know I teased last week that I have a big prediction on the show today, and I'm willing to nail that down and lock it in as something that I will tie myself to, because I passionately and firmly believe this to be the case. And I'll get to let me set the stage here let's get organized. So let me set the stage on what I mean. Let's just go conference by conference on teams that got in. ACC got 9 teams in. 9 teams. Their 9th and final team to get in was Syracuse, an 11 seed. Last team to make the field. And because of that, Syracuse, they have the most teams in the field of any conference in the country. what's crazy is they made it in over Notre Dame. And when you talk to the committee said that if that upset didn't happen on Sunday, Notre Dame was in the tournament. But since an at-large was stolen from, I think, Rhode Island, I think got their at-large, they lost their conference championship, so two teams got in from that conference because Rhode Island was firmly in the field. That it knocked Notre Dame out, which if you're a Notre Dame fan, that must be tough to hear. Speaking of Notre Dame fans, it's been really weird because normally, and I hate to generalize, and I hate to, I guess, put everybody in the same category because not everybody out there is like this, but there's a good majority. I ask people while I'm home, like, IU's not in the tournament, who are you rooting for? Normally, I hear Notre Dame, but this is like uncharted waters. Or like if Notre Dame's not in the tournament, I'll ask somebody, so Notre Dame's not in the tournament, who are you rooting for? IU. Well, IU's not in the tournament either. So I'm getting a lot of, I'm just watching. I'm not really rooting for anybody. Or I'll get the occasional Butler, which it's kind of in the same category as the other two. But it shocks me because normally it's, throw on the Notre Dame t-shirt, let's go Irish, or let's throw on the IU t-shirt, let's go Hoosiers. But with them both out, are you watching the NIT, I guess, maybe? Notre Dame? I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it just doesn't sit right with me because it just doesn't make sense. I feel bad. There's a lot of people here in where I'm currently residing and in other parts of Indiana that I think they're a little lost in these next couple days because, you're just going to sit there and you're just watching the tournament as a fan of college basketball, which nothing wrong with that. If Purdue wasn't in, I'd probably be doing the same thing. But you best believe I wouldn't be rooting for any other team besides my own. So I feel bad. And, there's probably an unsportsmanlike conduct rooted in there, but we're just going to let that go. All right, back to business. So ACC gets 9 teams in. SEC gets 8 teams in. Big 12 gets 7 teams in. Big East gets 6 teams in. So there we go. 9, 8, 7, 6. ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big East. So Big East was 6. Who's next? Big 10. 4 teams. 4 teams in. That's half as many as the SEC, and that's less than half in the ACC, and that's 3 less in the Big 12, 2 less in the Big East. 4 teams in. Who's below us? American got 3. That's Cincinnati, Wichita State, Houston. Atlantic 10 got 3. Rhode Island, St. Bonaventure, who won last night, and Davidson. Pac-12 got 3. Arizona, UCLA, and Arizona State. One of those teams will be knocked out because they play each other. Wait. No, they don't. UCLA lost last night, so they're out. So they're down to 2 teams. Mountain West gets 2, and then so on and so forth get the automatic bids. We got one more team than the American Conference. The Big Ten did. One more team than the Atlantic 10. Rhode Island, St. Bonaventure, and Davidson are the 3 representatives from the Atlantic 10, and as the Big Ten, we get one more team. You can't sit here and tell me that Nebraska doesn't deserve to be in this bracket, and if you talk to the committee, they were one of the last teams to get knocked out. Right there with Notre Dame was Nebraska, and I agree. 13 wins in conference and you don't make the tournament. That's tough to hear. Penn State knocks off Ohio State 3 times. That's some quality wins right there, and they don't get in. It's hard to hear. So here's my prediction. And I am locked in on this. The Big Ten will have more teams in the Elite 8 than the Big 12 and the SEC. SEC has 8 teams in the field. That's double what the Big Ten has. Big 12 has 7 teams in the field. And I think the Big Ten will have more teams in the Elite 8 than both of them. And the Big East. Freeze. Yep, and the Big East. Here's my Elite 8 and who I think is going to get in. Excuse me. Here's who I think is going to be playing in the Elite 8. From the Big Ten, Purdue, Michigan State, and Michigan, I think will all make it to the Elite 8. Michigan State has a tough road because they'll have to beat Duke to get there, which is a brutal Sweet 16 matchup. But it is what it is, and I think Michigan State knocks off Duke and moves on to the Elite 8. I mean, if we're going to go a step further, now I'll wait on that. Michigan, with a little bit of an easier path in my opinion, but they'll have to knock off North Carolina in a tough 2-3 match there. They'll have to take on North Carolina, but I think that they beat North Carolina and they're in the Elite Eight. And then Purdue with, in my opinion, the easiest of the 3 seeds, which is Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is not as good as, well, Michigan State is the 3. First off, Texas Tech is not as good as Michigan State. And Texas Tech is not as good as Michigan either, who is another 3. So I think Purdue gets the easiest 3 out of the 3, gets the easiest matchup if it goes chalk as any of the other 2 Big Ten teams. So I think Purdue, Michigan State, and Michigan all make it to the Elite Eight. Who makes it to the Elite Eight from the Big 12? Kansas, West Virginia. That's it. Who makes it from the... That's 2. So Big 10, 3. Big 12, 2. Boom. Big 10 gets them. Who makes it from the SEC? Tennessee. That's it. 1 team from the SEC. SEC has 8 teams in this field. And then I think they're going to get 1. Tennessee. Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Missouri, Alabama. None of them are going to make it. And I think Purdue beats Arkansas in the second round. So, third round, technically. So, bring it. ACC, Mr. 9 team in the conference. I don't really feel like I should mess with the ACC because I think the ACC is really, really good. They're no doubt about it the best conference, and that's why they deserve 9. Now, they don't know if they deserve Syracuse as the 11th seed, but they deserve a lot of these teams. Virginia's really good. Duke's really good. North Carolina's really good. And Duke and North Carolina can easily beat Michigan and Michigan State and completely blow out this entire prediction. So I'm not messing with the ACC. I'm good with that. But I think the SEC is very overrated. Tennessee is the only team that I think is even close to good enough to make it to the Elite Eight. And that's why I have them picked as my only Elite Eight team from the SEC. Big 12 is the most overrated conference in the country. I've said that from their style of play does not transfer over against other conferences. And we're going to see it firsthand Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Because there's not going to be many teams that make it to next Sunday and next Saturday in the Elite Eight. Kansas is good. Texas Tech is not. West Virginia is good. TCU is not. Kansas State is not. Oklahoma is not. Texas is not. Kansas, only team out of the Big 12 to make it to the Elite Eight, in my opinion. Big East, dicey, interesting. I think Xavier is a very, very overrated team, and they don't deserve the 1 seed. So I don't think Xavier makes it to the Elite Eight. Villanova, that could be the matchup for Purdue in the Elite Eight, but I think they're going to have a tough time getting by West Virginia to get there. So Villanova's Xavier, no good. Creighton, no good. Seton Hall, no good. Butler, it's Butler. I'm not against Butler. I don't think they can beat Arkansas, and I don't think they can beat Purdue. But Butler's that'd be a saucy Sunday matchup against the Boilers in the round of 32. I don't see it happening, but it's saucy. It's interesting. Providence, sneaky good. Could be a first-round upset there for Providence as a 10 seed. We'll get to that in a minute. Then you got the Big Ten. Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan all make it. Ohio State, I'm very, very, very concerned about Ohio State. I'm very concerned about their first game against San Diego State, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then under that, Cincinnati, Wichita State, Houston. I think the Big Ten could have the second most teams in the Elite Eight behind the ACC. But yet we get 4 teams in this tournament, and all this talk about it being top-heavy. You can't call it top-heavy when Penn State knocks off Ohio State 3 times, when Penn State beats Michigan State, when Nebraska takes Michigan State and Michigan and Ohio State all to the brink. You can't call us top-heavy when we have 3 teams when we have, well, we'll see. But you can't call us a weak conference and just a top-heavy conference when some of these teams who don't make the tournament gave these top-heavy teams a run for their money and beat them. Makes no sense to me. So that's my prediction. Big Ten is going to get the second most teams in the Elite Eight. They're going to get 3 in behind the ACC, who could have, if they blow up my plan, Virginia, Duke, and North Carolina all in it. But I don't think Virginia makes it. Maybe just Duke, North Carolina. But if Duke and North Carolina make it to the Elite Eight, that means I'm down to 1 Big Ten team, so ACC would beat me. But they will have more than the SEC, the Big 12, the Big East, and so forth. All right. let's cut that audio, Brainy Bunch, and we will play that back in a week, and we'll play it back in 2 weeks after we might have to play it back in a week, depending on if this goes horribly wrong. But hopefully that stands true. Bracket that looks the most tough to me, no doubt about it, it's the Midwest. And that's pretty much a consensus pick amongst a lot of people. When you have Duke as a 2 seed, Michigan State as a 3, and that alone is just brutal. That's a brutal 2-3 right there. Because in a lot of eyes, Michigan State is a 2 seed or 1, and Duke is definitely a 2. So you have, and that's grueling. That's going to be a very tough draw for Michigan State and Duke. That's going to be a prize fight in the Sweet 16 that could have been a title game. That's 2 teams that are title contenders, and one of them is going to get knocked out in the Sweet 16. I think the easiest bracket would have to be, it's probably the West, because it's very uncertain. North Carolina could make a run in it. Michigan could make a run in it. Gonzaga could make a run in it. I mean, and that's your 2, 3, and 4, all with a chance to make a run in it. And then that doesn't even count your number 1 seed, Xavier, who I don't think deserves. I think that's why the West is the most uncertain, is because Xavier is the most uncertain number 1. Midwest is definitely your toughest bracket. South and East, I think, are very similar to me. You got teams at the top, Virginia and Villanova, that are very similar, and they can be great one day and bad the next and get knocked off the next. And then you have 2 seeds who are unproven in Purdue and Cincinnati. You have 3 seeds that are very iffy in Texas Tech and Tennessee, but Tennessee, I think, could make a run at it. Who are my final 4 picks? I have Arizona coming out of the South. They knock off Tennessee in the Elite 8 to get to the Final 4. I have Gonzaga coming out of the West. They knock off Michigan to get to the Final 4. I got Michigan State coming out of the Midwest. They knock off Kansas to get to the Final 4. And I have your Purdue Boilermakers coming out of the East, knocking off West Virginia to get to the Final 4, because I think West Virginia can upset Villanova. Different styles of pace. If Virginia hits from the outside and stays out of foul trouble and dictates the pace of the game, they will beat Villanova. So that sets me up with Arizona against Gonzaga and Purdue against Michigan State in the Final 4. So you got a Big Ten rematch. You got 2 Big Ten teams in the Final 4. And there's no surprise here because I have a strong allegiance and they sign my paycheck. Purdue wins it all over Gonzaga. Combined score of 155 points. Boilers win it in dramatic fashion in San Antonio, and I'm there watching Isaac Haas, Vince Edwards, Dakota Mathias, and PJ Thompson cutting down the nets and putting an exclamation point on what has been an amazing 4 years at Purdue. God, I hope it comes true. All right, so there's my March Madness breakdown. As far as teams who can upset in the first round, some teams that maybe, if you're looking for a saucy pick in the first round to upset, Loyola Chicago over Miami of Florida is a very popular pick as an upset, and I agree. South Dakota State over Ohio State's been a very popular 5-12 upset. That's the one you're looking for. I don't really believe in any of these 12 seeds, but that's probably one that I'd look at. Less of an upset, but still an upset. I mean, New Mexico State has the 12 over the 5. I think they can definitely beat Clemson. So New Mexico State over Clemson is a very saucy pick. And SF Austin over Texas Tech, I think, is a saucy first-round pick if you're looking for the upset there. So those are some upsets in the first round that could bust brackets early. Like I said last week, and you can go back and watch last week's episode on YouTube, I went through a lot of teams and who are the contenders and who are the pretenders. Go check it out. It's worth your time. All right, we got to move on here as we close up shop. I want to get to unsportsmanlike conduct before we say goodbye, and so let's do that right now. Here is unsportsmanlike conduct.
And now, an unsportsmanlike conduct.
Personal foul, number 15, unsportsmanlike conduct.
That's a horrible call!
I have 2 unsportsmanlike conducts for you today, both coming from the basketball world of sports. First one, and I hinted on it earlier, was that selection show. Oh, I tried to warn you. If you listened last week, I gave you a preview of what they were going to do. It didn't sound good coming out of my mouth, but I was optimistic, and boy, did it not. Was I right on it. Well, that was a train wreck of a show. They just tried too hard. The alphabetical order didn't work. Took all the drama out of it. And if you didn't study the bubble like I did for the last week and a half, you were missing teams when they were going alphabetical order. We didn't know, like, we'd hear a team, they go to the next team, and then a lot of the audience didn't know that, well, that just knocked a bubble team out, or that just put a bubble team in. They needed to have the bubble on, like, the side. Like, Jerry Palm's bubble needed to be on the side. That way you could compare and, like, cross out teams or put check marks next to teams when they get in or they're crossed out, because it was impossible to keep track on who was making it in this tournament and who was not, and who were the surprises, unless it was a big name like Oklahoma getting in. So it didn't work. And they had trouble with the sound. It was delayed. They had trouble. I mean, having Charles Barkley is hilarious, but having him up there trying to fill out a bracket with Kenny or Shaq, I forget who. No, I think he was sitting there with Kenny. That was dumb. Now, so Unsportsmanlike kind of goes definitely into CBS Sports. It just didn't work. I thought Jerry Palm was great. I thought his bracket breakdown was phenomenal. But other than that, it just wasn't working. It tried too hard. It was too long. It was too drawn out. It took all the drama out of it, and it just wasn't well put together. The studio audience was lame. I get it, trying something new. It just didn't work, and I hope they look at this and they evaluate it, and next year it's different, because it's ruining what has been such a great show for many years. Last year was close to ruined. 2 years ago it was leaked. Year before that it was perfect. Ever since it got leaked, they're trying too hard. If it gets leaked, it gets leaked. Who cares? Hopefully everybody's tuning into the show, and if you get to the bracket right at the top of the hour, you don't have to worry about it getting leaked. And if you don't do a commercial in between every region, you don't have to worry about it getting leaked. And I know it's about ratings, and I know it's about trying to get the ratings for the full 2 hours. And I get it that as soon as that bracket is released, people will be shutting off the station. I understand that. But you've got to take into account the reaction from these people. And just because you have a 2-hour show that people are watching mad doesn't mean it's good. Like, that's not good. I get that ratings are important. I get that it's about sponsors. It's about money. I get that. I understand it. I'm studying it. I get the business. But it doesn't make it right for you to put together a horrible product that makes people angry and takes all the fun out of what is one of the best days of the year, Selection Sunday, for a lot of these teams. The alphabetical order was dumb. You should have went, if you're going to do it that way, just do the bubble teams. Like, announce who's in from the bubble teams. That way you don't have to worry about getting leaked. And then as soon as you get done announcing these bubble teams that get in, now let's go see where their fate is and what bracket they're going to be in. And boom, we go to the first region and we start down and we list off all the teams. Do it that way. There's solutions to this. And I know there's smart people there at CBS Sports that are going to get this right eventually. Hopefully it's next year, because this was a train wreck. It's getting worse and worse every year, and people are getting fed up with it. We switched over to SportsCenter, ESPN, as soon as we could after Purdue was announced, and listened to those guys, and those guys were phenomenal. They've been phenomenal for the last 3 days. I've watched a disgusting amount of bracket, tournament challenge, game night coverage, and they've been great. Jay Billis is amazing. Jay Willis is great. Dan Dockage is awesome. Tom Crean is phenomenal. Reese Davis is doing a great job hosting. Then you got Michelle Beadle coming in, doing great. Candace Parkus, wow, that's not her name. Candace Parker coming in. I mean, just the list of people they got coming into the show, and they rotate, they play games, they talk about predicting, they talk about upsets, they're talking about storylines. Then you got Marty Smith going around to different campuses. He was at Purdue. That was his first stop. And then he went to a bunch of different schools, and he's been on the road. He's phenomenal. It's just been entertaining. It's been fun. It's been watchable. So ESPN's doing a great job. But Unsportsmanlike Conduct to CBS Sports. And trust me, if you guys listen to this show, you can go back and find multiple clips of this on my YouTube page. I am ESPN's biggest critic. I know they signed my paycheck. I know that I'm an employee, but I am not. I have never been afraid to call them out when they do something stupid or wrong. But they are getting this right, and they are killing it right now. I'm looking forward to Charles. I'm looking forward to Chucky. I'm looking forward to the CBS coverage with Kenny and Greg Gumbel and Ernie and all the guys. And it's going to be fun. Charles Barkley is always entertaining to watch, and I'm looking forward to that. But right now, they're losing me. And there's some guys at that company I can't stand to listen to. And I know there's a lot of Purdue fans out there that agree with me. But they're starting to lose me, and I hopefully that they bring it back and their in studio stuff is good these next 2 days, because I'm gonna be watching a disgusting amount of their coverage. So I'm hoping it's better, because right now it's no good. My second one, and we haven't had an NBA fight in a while, and thankfully, NBA is not really that relevant right now. We're getting close to playoff time and teams that are in contention and who's gonna battle Golden State. We finally had a decent little skirmish. I don't know if that is. A decent little fisticuffs last night between Julius Randle and blanking on his name, Nikola Jokic. Nothing better than two irrelevant guys taking it to the hardwood to do a little shoulder bumping and some close face talking. Something about irrelevant players fighting just really gets my goat. Big fan of it. Anything to stay relevant, especially when you're two big men where your position is getting completely taken out of the NBA day by day. Sooner or later, we're just going to be playing with 4 guys, or we're going to play with 5. But if you're over 6'9", you're not allowed to play on the court. It's been very entertaining. But with 21 seconds remaining, they were locked up together trying to rebound, and we got a little Randall shoving of Jokic on the floor, and they've been going at it for most of the game, so they were quickly celebrated before anything could really escalate. Shocker, typical NBA fight. No, nothing really happens. But I'm gonna give it unsportsmanlike conduct to both these players, because it's one thing to try to stay relevant and bumping shoulders, but let's see somebody throw a haymaker. Let's make this actually big news. There's my second unsportsmanlike conduct, and I know I'm running out of time. Thank you for everybody who tuned in to this special March Madness bracket coverage. Send me your photos where you're listening on the beach to Next Point Wins. Send me your setup if you're at home or if you're in Vegas or anywhere, a sports bar, whatever, these next 2 days watching the games. Love to see where my listeners are tuning in for the greatest 2 days in college basketball and 2 of the best days of the year for a sports fan. I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. I personally can't wait. I'm going to have trouble sleeping tonight. It's going to be a ton of fun. Enjoy the games. Boiler up. Let's take care of CSU Fullerton. Let's survive in advance. That's all it takes. Survive in advance day in and day out and have fun. This has been Next Point Wins.